I wanted to do is introduce myself and my associate here. I'm Kathy Pauling. I'm with CenturyLink. I'm the account manager that handles the government and education space. I work with Paul Matsikas, who's our sales engineer. And we're with CenturyLink. Just before I start, I've had a couple slides to kind of describe a little bit about CenturyLink. I was talking to a lot of folks today. They really weren't familiar with the brand. Is anyone here familiar with CenturyLink? Donovan is, because we've worked together a little bit in the past. So interestingly enough, just to give you a quick, I do have a couple slides, but I will tell you a little bit about CenturyLink. But what I'm here to talk about today with Paul, we've been working on an initiative with the Connecticut Education Network, and that initiative is to take advantage of the investment of both the Nutmeg Network and the CEN Network, and using those fiber paths, and to essentially to deliver a hosted voice over IP solution that would be, in this instance, delivered by CEN, and we would be providing that through the existing connections that we have to the CEN network. So, just go to the next slide.
That's me.
Okay, so that's our initiative. Couple things about who we are as a company, and I'll say a little bit about our background. What we bring to the marketplace, CenturyLink, we are a Tier 1 ISP, we're a Tier 1 global IP backbone. We also are a market-leading provider of cloud services. And how we differentiate ourselves and what makes a difference in our marketplace is really how we take those two assets and we deliver applications and services, and more importantly, we develop solutions that add value to our customers and to their business processes. So from a CEN perspective, they also have a very similar mission, and they are also taking an access network and trying to add value onto that to deliver throughout the state of Connecticut to get good value from that investment. So we have been a long-term partner with the Connecticut Education Network. We've been one of their major internet service providers for over 12 years. And in addition to that, the Connecticut Education Network, all the fibers that are coming in from all of the anchor institutions, they're all coming in to actually the CenturyLink backbone network. They're coming into our locations in our POPs located in West Haven and New London, Connecticut. So literally when you think about it visually, the CEN network is really sitting on our network in our POPs and our infrastructures. So we were talking about how can we add as a carrier, Tier 1, we're the third largest telecom provider in the United States, and we have ILEC presence in 37 states. So in talking with CEN, we tried to figure out ways that we can add unique benefits and value to the Connecticut Education Network, which where we're positioned is actually, in a way, an extension of our network going out to the institutions. So we are jointly offering this initiative, which delivers a hosted voice service to the members of the Connecticut Education Network. Some of the unique benefits of this product or service is that in its core design, this implementation is based on a BroadSoft, which is an industry-leading hosted cloud software platform. Our delivery of that is based on and designed to have 5 nines of reliability. That's 99.999. And what that equates to is less than 5 minutes of outage in a year. How you get to that kind of reliability, it's all about the architecture and the engineering. It's how your networks are designed, how each and every component of your system and your power is both diverse and redundant. So our implementation of this type of hosted VoIP solution is actually unique in that we're a carrier, we're a Tier 1 carrier delivering this network, and we ensure the reliability of our backbone and of the BroadSoft architecture. On our backbone, we host BroadSoft in 4 separate diverse locations that give the complete redundancy so that if there's a snowstorm in Connecticut or power outage for 4 days, your logical phone system is still up, and we'll talk about some other features later that actually allow the people on the network to communicate. The other benefits of a cloud-based offer like this is that if compelling reasons why this is so cost efficient in us working with CEN to deliver this is that the access costs to extend this technology to their premises is covered. It's in place by the CEN network. So besides all the benefits of voice over IP and convergence of voice and data on the same channel, this is really even more extension of your physical assets and taking out a lot of costs if we were to deliver it outside of the CEN infrastructure. The other benefit that you get when you have a cloud-based solution as opposed to a premise-based voice over IP network is that it gives you a lot more flexibility, scalability. You're protected from local power outages. You're also protected by a 7x24 management organization and network operations center. You have the resiliency of all the power feeds that go into that, dual power. So there's a lot more architecture and safety nets that can be put in the cloud than you can put on premise. This feature of anywhere, when you put something in the cloud, it also gives you a lot more flexibility on how to route traffic and how to reach your employees and your business partners. So at the cloud level, you can set up different ways to point the phone call. With your business number, you can be out in the office, you can have it prearranged or on the fly set it, with the calls to simultaneously ring to different
Okay, but what a developer does have at his disposal is application development environments. So typically when you want to build an application, what you find is that there's a lot of steps that are involved. The PaaS is meant to solve those problems. Most people come to me when I talk about a PaaS and they say, Frank, we don't need a PaaS. We have a PaaS already. It's called our virtualization environment. If a developer wants to build an application in my environment, what I do is I have them fill out a ticket, and then once they fill out that ticket, I take a template in my virtualization environment, which is called VMware for an example. Take my VMware template, I spin up that VM, I give it to that person, and I say, okay, I want you to run yum install foo baz and bar. I want you to run apt-get install your middleware stack, install install Apache, install Ruby, Python, Perl, whatever, and here's your VM, and you're off to the races. And so that's a platform as a service, Frank, isn't it? And so I look at that person and I say, well, it's on the right track, but couldn't you automate even more of what you're providing that developer? Wouldn't it be nice if the developer didn't have to do any sort of systems administration? Right? The developer didn't have to obtain a VM and install an OS and install a middleware layer, install a runtime, install a database to work with that runtime. Imagine if all that was just given to him. How much time would he have, or how much additional time would he have to innovate and develop? Right? And you say, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. That's a PaaS. Right? So what a PaaS does is it takes care of all the systems administration for the developer and leaves the developer with a resource that allows him to create the application that he needs. In a lot of ways, developers are artists. At least that's what they tell me, the developer. I'm an artist. And so I don't have time to do this systems administration. I want to work on my piece of art. Give me a paintbrush and let me run. Right? It's not like you give Leonardo da Vinci a paintbrush and an easel and say, well, you can't just start painting because you have to build that paintbrush. You got to adjust those bristles. Now you got to mix some paint, before you can actually go out. Maybe they did that. They probably did. But imagine if he didn't have to do that, what he would create. Right? So that's what a PaaS is, right? And this is a nice kind of a list of steps that oftentimes you'd have to go through just to get an application off the ground. You see the laundry list of steps with physical environments. You got to get the box. Once you get the box, you got to get it racked. Once you get it racked, you got to make sure you have power, cooling, and everything else. And then once that's in place, well, then you still need to install the OS. Still need to install the stack and everything else. Virtualization is really not that much better with your typical VMware environment, right? Yeah, maybe you start with like a template. This stuff's kind of all at the beginning, and then you deploy all that. You still have to do the systems administration to get that application up and running. With the PaaS, it's really, all right, I have the idea, I have the budget, I have the code in my mind, or at least I think I do. Let me go ahead and let me put that into a runtime and let me get off to the races. And that's what a PaaS provides, and that's really critical for individuals that are trying to adopt a DevOps strategy. right? Because one of the things that we can do both in the systems administration side of the house and the development side of the house is we can tear down the boundaries of administration and allow us to innovate and develop the line of business applications that we need to add revenue or to contribute to the bottom line of our company or our organization. So that's kind of what the PaaS thing is all about. Anybody use a PaaS technology? No one's kind of dabbling in it. If you haven't, you're really going to love OpenShift. I think it's really cool. That's a perfect segue. Because what I really want to focus on now, that we kind of have an idea of DevOps and kind of an idea of PaaS, is kind of how you can take advantage of tools that are out there, in this case in particular OpenShift, which I think is probably one of the most compelling, if not the most compelling PaaS, and I'll kind of show you why, for adopting a DevOps strategy and adopting a PaaS in your environment. And so, first thing to kind of talk about is, the different types of configurations, or what can I kind of obtain with OpenShift. So OpenShift has been around for quite some time. Some of you, I know I spoke with you kind of coming in, some of you have heard of it before, some of you haven't. So OpenShift, it was launched originally a few years back as a cloud, a hosted platform as a service by Red Hat, and has since then been appropriated in a variety of different contexts. So there are three ways of consuming OpenShift today. OpenShift Online is the easiest way. It's a free service up to what we call 3 gears, and we'll kind of talk about what a gear is. It's a free service, free to start, and then there's a paid tier depending on the SLA you need and the capacity you need. OpenShift Online, go to OpenShift.com. And if you like that premise, you like the PaaS solution, but you want to bring it in-house, you don't want it running in the public cloud, there's a product called OpenShift Enterprise, which gives you platform as a service within your organization. And in keeping with kind of the spirit of Red Hat and open source, we also have a community project called OpenShift Origin that's completely free and open source, able to be downloaded, consumed, and deployed, and more importantly, contributed to by the greater community out there in the world. Very quickly before we move ahead, how many of you are familiar with Red Hat as a company? Some of you. For those of you that aren't, one thing that I just want to kind of preface is one thing that we do is we're the world's largest open source software vendor. And obviously everybody knows Red Hat Enterprise Linux probably pretty well. But one thing that we're committed to as a company that I think separates us from a lot of other open source vendors is the fact that we will always sponsor and facilitate community innovation. So we will, 9 times out of 10, whenever there's an enterprise product offered by a subscription with support, SLA, certifications, etc., we'll maintain a community implementation of that solution upstream that is really kind of driving the innovation of that technology, where you can participate in that technology. Being part of the academic community in particular kind of gives you a lot of flexibility and empowers you to shape the way that your enterprise products are going to look and behave in the future. I just kind of wanted to preface that. Let's take a look at the rest of OpenShift itself. This is where I think you guys are going to do. This stuff is really cool. It's mind-blowingly cool, actually. And so, the premise of OpenShift itself is a software solution that runs on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Now that goes for OpenShift Enterprise and OpenShift Online. For the most part, we're going to focus on OpenShift Enterprise just for sake of argument here as a standard, but the same terms and the same configuration I mentioned to you would also be in the cloud service, that you wouldn't have to worry about accessing that, and in the open source project. So everywhere you find RHEL, OpenShift as a software solution will be able to be run. And so when you look at an OpenShift configuration, what you'll find is that there are 2 different types of nodes in an OpenShift environment. There's something called an OpenShift broker on the one hand, and something called an OpenShift execution node or node on the other. And the difference between the two is a broker is a management platform. It contains application state information. It handles dynamic DNS, so it handles name resolution for your application. It handles the kind of state of the application, the orchestration of the application environment. And an OpenShift node in your environment hosts your application. We use a container-based technology we're going to get into a little bit later that will allow you to achieve incredible application density for your applications on your existing platform, on your OpenShift platform. Now, OpenShift itself, your applitions that you create within OpenShift run in something called OpenShift gears. So an OpenShift gear is a container, a Linux container technology that runs within OpenShift. This is how most people run OpenShift. They have a virtualization environment. They have their VMware environment using KVM, using OpenStack, something like that. And when they have that environment in place, they run OpenShift on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux VMs. So they almost like install OpenShift as an application. And then as that's running on those VMs, within those VMs, they have OpenShift gears that are created when you create an application. A gear is a completely isolated container that your application lives within. Think of it kind of like a VM, but much more fundamental because it doesn't have its own hardware. It doesn't have its own hardware abstraction layer, but it shares the resources of the OpenShift node. Does that make sense? It's kind of weird stuff. Container stuff is kind of weird, I think, when you first hear it. But OpenShift gears are where your applications live, and these gears are defined by the Linux subsystems. So there are three big components technologically that go into an OpenShift gear. The first is something called SE Linux. Anybody in here have a Linux background? Okay. How many of you that with a Linux background in the room hear the word SE Linux and you turn and you run? Probably everybody, yeah, right? So SE Linux, Security Enhanced Linux, is a mandatory access control framework for Linux that you find primarily in Red Hat systems, developed by the NSA originally, and now we kind of maintain that project. But SE Linux, for all the grief that it's caused people in the past, is now a very viable solution. And the nice thing about OpenShift is that your applications, when you create them, are actually created within what they call an SE Linux namespace. And what that means is your application, as you're building as a developer, becomes securely isolated within that container, so that if you have some sort of flaw or exploit within the application you create, and somebody takes advantage of that exploit cannot run rampant throughout the rest of your applications running in OpenShift. So you have a military-grade security technology built in for free in this solution. This is nice for government institutions. It's nice for higher ed as well, and all forms of it, to be honest. Another part of the Linux subsystem that's used to create an OpenShift gear is something called Linux control groups, or Linux C groups. This is a really cool technology. It's starting to really take off in enterprise Linux capacities. Linux C groups is an element of the Linux kernel that handles dynamic resource allocation. So if you need to control or prohibit things like runaway processes and things like that on your Linux system, C groups can do that for you. C groups, though, in OpenShift have a very interesting purpose. They dynamically manage the resources of your OpenShift node for all of your applications. The nice thing about this is that it can handle application load and sensitivity. So as application load increases, we can dynamically scale OpenShift gears to allow your application to elastically adapt to the increasing workload. You can also scale back down that resource. It's also good because it provides you with probably the most sophisticated resource management that you can have on a Linux platform for an application, which gives you incredible application density. As an example, OpenShift Online last year, OpenShift Online had over 400,000 applications running on it on 16 nodes. So for 16 nodes, 16 physical systems, we had 400,000 applications running. It's up over 1 million now. I think they grew it out to about 25 nodes. So C groups is an example of how we can get that type of application density. This is great to have in development environments. You start with a small OpenShift farm, 2 or 3 nodes, and you will be set for thousands of applications. When you combine Linux control groups, you combine SE Linux, what you get is a multi-tenant platform that provides you with isolated containers for all of your applications. And this is really just reiterating the point made earlier that there are a plethora of options for application density in OpenShift. So how does OpenShift actually work for the developers in the room, right? Right now I'm kind of just talking to the Linux nuts in the room, like me. And I get really excited about talking about the Linux subsystem and then the kernel and SE Linux and everything like that. And the developers usually look at me and say, Frank, we don't care what happened to the, I don't want to be a sysadmin, I just want to work on my piece of art. But how do I take advantage of a tool like this so that I can embrace the DevOps philosophy? And so this is typically how a developer interacts with OpenShift, and I'll actually show you a video clip of OpenShift in action. I think that you'll find really interesting. The thing that normally starts is a developer creates a new application within OpenShift, and he can do so in a variety of different ways. He can do it through a web interface, so he can log onto a web page. I need to create a PHP application, or I need a Python application. He logs in, he selects what we call a cartridge, which is a drop-in runtime that pre-configures the development environment for him. Once he selects that cartridge, he can use a revision control system, in this case Git, to create a local repository of the source code, make the modifications to the application that he needs, and then push that back up to OpenShift, all while maintaining continuity of the application's integrity running within OpenShift, all having name resolution in place, all with having the structure of the enterprise platform in place. So he creates a new application. When he creates a new application, OpenShift gear is spun up. He then interacts with that application. He can interact with that application through the web UI, which I mentioned. He can also use an IDE. So let's say he's using Eclipse, for example, as an IDE. A lot of people do. Pushes into an open source development. Interact with. We also have a series of command line tools. So you can install a command line service. So he can do all of the application creation through a command line interface, which takes advantage of RESTful APIs running in OpenShift. As he's creating this application, his gear is being spun up that contains his application itself. The cartridges that he selects determine the type of middleware and the type of development language that he wants to work with. Now, there's a variety of different types of cartridges in OpenShift. OpenShift is targeted primarily towards open source development. So if you're doing things like Python, Ruby, Perl, PHP, Django is big now. That stuff is all available for you with the latest iterations in cartridges running in OpenShift. We also have a collection of cartridges that are what we call pre-configured systems. So if I need a WordPress environment, I click a WordPress cartridge. WordPress is stood up instantly. Don't have to worry about MySQL. Don't have to worry about all the other dependencies to stand that environment up. If I need a Drupal environment, click the Drupal cartridge. Done. Right? That's the stuff that the developers don't want to normally deal with. They don't want to have to set up Drupal. They just want to use Drupal. They don't want to set up WordPress. They just want to use WordPress. We're also kind of experimenting with adding more proprietary languages within OpenShift that hasn't been decided outright yet, but there's a push for having like .NET support and things like that also on the platform. We also have extensive JBoss cartridge set. So if you're using Java-based, if you do Java-based development, you can have full JBoss EAP instances running. We need to drop in a database for your application. Happens a lot, right? I build a PHP app. I have the runtimes there, but now I need a database. Right? Normally what happens, you gotta just download the database, install it, declare all the environmental variables, tie everything together. In OpenShift for a developer, all they do is add another cartridge. That database is dropped down into the runtime, and as it's dropped down into the runtime, all the environmental variables are automated and instantiated. Yeah.
I'm just curious, when you say add cartridge, is that like
Click, point click.
okay, so
Yeah.
so there's like a OpenShift interface.
Yeah, and I'll show. I have a video that I took.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
I was just curious.
There's actually a bunch of ways you can do it. You can do it through an IDE, so you can do it through Eclipse, the JBoss Developer Studio. You can do it through the command line. You can do it in a variety of different ways, which is pretty cool. And you can do this on all of your major development platforms. That's Windows. You can do that on OS 10. You can do it on Linux. Depending whatever your development workstation looks like, you can take advantage of that. Different types of cartridges. We're going to kind of see that in more action. Now, when you actually create your application, and we'll actually see a video of how this works. I recorded it because oftentimes when you rely on like hotel wireless and things like that to do demonstrations, you can have all kinds of problems. Ask the guy that was here before me. He was coming out and saying, "Oh man, nothing was working. My virtual desktop disappeared." And So I did it ahead of time. But I'll show you the kind of video of how what this looks like. But once you actually create the application, the next thing you do is you develop on the application, and we use Git as the revision control system. So anybody use Git in here for their development projects? Okay. If you haven't, it's pretty straightforward. I think you get used to it. It's the most common revision control system for open source projects out there. One of the benefits is it's distributed in nature, so all developers can kind of carry around a local source repository, make their modifications, and then push it up to the application as needed. We use all Git calls. They're all encapsulated within SSH. In fact, we use SSH for all the authentication. We use SSH keys for all the authentication in the environment. So everything is using IPsec grade encryption technologies. All of your Git pushes and everything is secure. So let's go. I'm going to show you that video so you can see what it looks. About 8 minutes or so. But I think with OpenShift, you have to see the thing in action to really kind of appreciate some of the tools that are available. I think you guys really want to. For those of you that are developers in the room, I think you're going to find this really compelling. Okay. So this is an example. I logged onto the OpenShift interface. I'm using OpenShift Online in this example, but the interface is identical for enterprise. So if you have it on-prem, so as a user, I log in. This is what all your users will be given. They'll be given a username and password that an administrator can control. In case I'm logging in, my Red Hat credentials. You can do this for free, by the way. You can leave this room today and you can do this. So log in OpenShift Online. First thing I have to do is I have to create an application. So I selected the Create Application link. Once I select the Create Application link, here you'll see all the different cartridges that are available. These are all the different runtimes. You'll see these instant apps. So there's your Drupal, there's your WordPress environment. Those are single clicks and you're done. See all kinds of different things that are available. Python, Ruby, different variations, PHP. So in this case, I'm going to create a PHP 5.3 app. So as a user, I click on the cartridge I want to use, and then I give this thing a name. And one thing that's nice about PAS is all the DNS has already been pre-configured. So I have my own DNS domain, and I'm calling this thing my test app or my first app. You'll see there I can select whether or not I want this application to be scalable or not. Scalable means I'm putting a software load balancer in front of it so that if demand increases, the application will spin up more gears to accommodate that. I hit the Create Application button. I was on Hotel Wireless, so this message here is just saying it could take a while. In this case, it takes about 30 seconds.
Why would you not want to make it scalable?
Certain cartridges just can't architecturally, and you may just have situations where you want to have restrictions over the size of the number of gears you're dedicated to it.
Okay.
So maybe you have other applications that you want to make sure that they're scalable, so you want to reserve those resources. You know, yeah.
Because this is for developers.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So now my application is created here. I know it's kind of hard to see with the resolution on the projector, but what this is giving me now is the actual Git syntax for downloading the local source code repository. What you'll see is that in order to take advantage of a lot of this stuff, you can install the Red Hat tools, the Red Hat OpenShift tools. This is kind of showing the instructions. It's all part of the interface. So for OS 10, for Windows, for Fedora, as a Linux distribution, for RHEL, for Ubuntu, etc. And so I apologize about the resolution. That's the projector. So I'll do my best to kind of narrate. You'll see it gives you the git clone command that you would use. So this is if I want to actually create the local Git repository for my application. So I'm just going to go into a terminal window here, and I'm just going to paste in that command that they gave me, which is just going to create a local Git repository of my app on my local workstation. And you'll see it prompts me for the SSH public key from the OpenShift site. I've already uploaded my public key, so authentication has already been taken care of. So now I'm actually working within my application's source directory, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create like a test.php page. But before I do that, you'll see if I can go back into OpenShift and click on my application, it's already resolvable in DNS. So this is what my application looks like right now. This is the index.php file. It's just a splash screen, but it just shows that that's immediately resolvable in DNS and your application is live. I'm going to go ahead here and copy a hello world script. I'm just going to call this test.php.
What's the URL at the top? There is.
The URL is when you set up an OpenShift account, at least in public OpenShift, or if you do it internally, you create as the administrator, or I should say in OpenShift Enterprise, you determine what the DNS subdomain is. In OpenShift Enterprise, it's just going to be your like username.rhcloud. That's publicly resolvable now. So now what I'm doing is I apologize. It seems a lot better on my laptop screen, but making the change, doing a git commit, and then pushing those changes up to the OpenShift site. So mind you, this is all happening in the cloud right now. Right? I don't need to have a development environment. And if I wanted to bring OpenShift Enterprise in-house, it'd be the same workflow for my developers. So I ran a git push that source code back up to the application. I'm just going to run a / here and do test.php. And my hello world script is going to show up there on the public internet immediately. Right? So now, next thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to show you something called the RHC command. This is part of the command line tools. So all the stuff that I just showed you in the web UI, you can do in the command line also. I know it's kind of hard to read, but those are the RHC commands that you can work with. And what I'm going to do here is run something called RHC app create. It's the command that you would use to create an application. So if I'm a more command line happy type of guy, I am personally. So if I was using this in production, I'd probably use the RHC tools more. I'm creating the same PHP 5.3 app, just giving it a different name. Hit enter. That application is now being built in OpenShift. Right? So I'll go back up to the website and you'll see it's present there. So this gives developers whenever they have an internet connection, access to the application they're building and working with. Or in your environment, anywhere with a VPN connection. So it's creating the application. I'm using the free version, gives you what we call three free small gears. Small gears, half a gig of memory, gig of storage for each kind of application. You can build scalable apps. For the hosted service, there's then a paid tier if you want to go up and get more capacity and more storage. But for just starting off with OpenShift, the three small gears is a great way to get involved with PaaS. And with Enterprise, the administrator determines what that is. And now you'll see that test.php app is up there. One thing that's also really nice, because it is a PaaS and because it's fundamentally a Linux system, you can manage your application as if it was a Linux VM. So here what I'm doing is I'm going to copy in an SSH command. It's going to SSH me into my gear, into my container. And you're going to see it has its own process set. So it appears to the application that it's its own Linux distribution running. But it's actually running as a subset, as a container within route. You'll see I have SSH in the box, run top here. You'll see then, there's a few processes running Apache, things like that. If I had a scalable application, you'd have like some of the software load balancing processes would be running.
And that's done so it can't mess up anything else.
Right, it's completely isolated. So even if I do like rm-f/ on that particular application, all the other applications will be fine. Yeah. I'm sorry?
Or SQL injection.
Yeah, anything, exactly.
You blow away that database, not the others.
In fact, there was a PaaS initiative in Department of Defense, and OpenShift was selected as the solution because of the security. Because you get the military-grade security for free, maybe, and you don't, as an SC Linux user, you don't have to worry about it. So let's imagine now I actually want to add another cartridge to my environment. What I just did here is I selected the MySQL cartridge. So if I need a database for my application, normally, in the non-PaaS world, I'd have to install that application. Maybe I'd use a yum install MySQL 5.5 or MariaDB or whatever, or apt-get install foo. Then I have to configure everything. That's the hardest part for developers. So I don't want to waste time with that. But here, you'll see the MySQL database was dropped into the application automatically. All the environmental variables were declared, and it's functioning as a database. And so I was toying with the idea of whether or not I wanted to go in and kind of go walk through the database and actually do some stuff, but I figured it'd probably be a little long-winded for a video. But that's kind of an excerpt of what OpenShift looks like in action, and something that I think you guys will find very interesting if you explore it. And the great thing about it is that you can start for free with any PaaS, and it's a great way to adopt a DevOps strategy for your environment. So what do you guys think of that video? Do you think that was pretty cool? Was that pretty slick stuff? Maybe it wasn't so slick. It makes me excited. I think it's one of the most interesting technologies that's come out of the open source community in a long time. The other one being OpenStack, which we'll do a talk this afternoon if anybody's interested. At 2:30, we're going to do an OpenStack 101 intro to OpenStack. I think it would be pretty neat. Now, for a lot of people that for a lot of people that are interested in OpenShift, and they say this is a really great technology, we've been using it in OpenShift Online, we're thinking about moving it into a production environment within our organization. But we have some questions about how we can do delegation of responsibility, how can we do separation of or life cycle separation. Can we do those types of things in OpenShift? And the answer is yes. So when a lot of people come to us and say, we really like OpenShift, but we want to be able to segregate the type of applications that are running on the types of OpenShift gears and the OpenShift nodes. And so maybe we want to have like a dev environment where we do our development work. Interestingly, OpenShift started off as just a dev environment, a development creation environment. But because of the nature of the technology and in true DevOps spirit, the tool can also be used as a hosting environment. So you can use it for hosting production applications as well. And so if, this is the wrong clicker. There's two clickers up there. So we have this concept that OpenShift is something called districts. So a district is a logical separation of OpenShift gears and nodes that can isolate application development within a certain boundary that you define. It's a fancy way of saying I can restrict developers from creating dev applications here, QA here, production here. And so this, again, in kind of the DevOps spirit, allows me greater flexibility. I can not only empower my developers, because that's what we always want to do. We want to give them the flexibility they need, but at the same time, what we also need to do is we need to make sure we enforce our corporate policies and our organizational policies. And so this can allow us to do that. I mentioned a little bit about the scaling technology earlier. So one of the really cool things about OpenShift and one of the cool things about PaaS in general is they generally have this scalability technology, being able to horizontally scale as load increases. So obviously you don't want to go through the work of building this application, only to find out that the application is so successful that your hosting infrastructure can't take advantage of it because there's too many requests. And so one of the neat things about OpenShift is this kind of scalability feature. When you create an application, you can mark it as scalable. And what that does is it actually spins up a separate gear with an HA proxy software load balancer with a threshold that you define. And if the threshold exceeds that value, let's say it's 500 connections within 5 seconds. I don't know, let's just say for argument's sake. A separate gear can be spun up. The application can be distributed across that gear and can take advantage of the increased load. So this has actually had we've had a lot of customers that are interested in using this in like student registration systems. Let's say at universities, for example, when it's like spring or fall semester registration, they build the application for student registration. Obviously, most people are just looking to register for classes at those 2 times of the year. Yeah, you can still pick up a class during the add-drop period and things of that nature, but it's generally right, before the start of the fall semester and the spring semester, we have a heavy load. They build the application on OpenShift, and then what happens is, as the students are kind of saying, I really want to get into that, that oceanography class, well, when they're doing that, the application can dynamically scale and accommodate that increased capacity. And then when everybody's now locked out of the oceanography class because it's full, well, then the application can be scaled back down. So when the demand subsides, we can relinquish the resources back to the OpenShift pool. In our space that Mike and I in the back room work on, and state and local government, this is also big for like emergency response systems. So you see certain cities and states that are building emergency response systems on things like OpenShift because of that scalability. Because when there's a disaster, that's when everybody goes to the website. Or when there's a snowstorm. But when that snowstorm's over, nobody's really going there anymore. So it's a great example of using the elasticity of the technology. This is a little bit more information on the HA proxy. We won't really go into that at this point. So that's kind of what the OpenShift landscape looks like. It's a web interface, it's a command line driven technology, it's an IDE driven technology that allows you as a developer to create your application and then more importantly, standardize the deployment model for that application. That's kind of OpenShift in a nutshell. And just to kind of wrap things up, because I know now I'm standing between now and lunchtime. I bet you it's almost time for lunch, right? I think I'm a little over. But why DevOps? Why is something like a DevOps strategy important for you in an organization? It allows you to quickly create and deliver modern applications. It allows you to transcend kind of the siloed boundaries that you normally have in the IT space, while still giving you consistency and operational excellence. And then why would you want to consider something like OpenShift for your PaaS strategy, and as a consequence of that, for your DevOps strategy, because it's an open source solution, which is very important when you're trying to build a DevOps strategy. We didn't even talk about that too much, we didn't have time. But building on a proprietary stack limits the flexibility that you have. The fact that you can take advantage of both on-premise and hosted configurations, and the fact that through things like SE Linux and the Linux subsystems, you have enhanced security and enhanced multi-tenancy capabilities. All the things that universities, school, K-12 school systems, state and local governments, federal governments, commercial entities, what everybody's looking for can be found in this product. I hope you enjoyed that session, and I will free everybody for lunch. Thank you very much. If you have questions, feel free to stick around.
By the way, as by now you probably figured out, this is a very flexible and feature-rich environment where you can open up any kind of file.
Also, as your folks all use their own devices, whether they're tablets or mobile phones, they can now use any device to be part of that logical network. So if there's a snowstorm in Connecticut and your town's been taken out of power, public safety folks still have capability to use wireless devices that are acting and appearing and feature and functioning just like their handsets. They make a phone call from it. It looks like that. They have directory access, and all they need to do is get internet access or a cellular device that's already been connected to that network. I think most of the folks in this room, they're pretty familiar with some of these mobility features, these anywhere features. Everyone knows the benefits of VoIP, but there's nothing to compare to the simplicity to manage this type of infrastructure. When you have your own premise-based system, you have to go for an RFP, select the technology, maintain that technology through maintenance contracts, perhaps hire someone to do new adds and changes when the employees move. You might have a business change that can need a bigger boat, you need a bigger switch, you might need a smaller switch. But having a virtualized or a cloud type of telephony solution, it just lets you deal with your telephony on an individual basis. So we've got some telecom managers and some IT managers that used to having to become experts with all these different types of technologies. You could actually take an office manager that can help set up your users, manage their features, do their moves, adds, and changes. And in fact, what you're going to see today, we're actually going to drill down to the portals, we're going to do a demo, and you're going to see how your users can actually do a lot of their own needs and their own feature changes and their own, and that essentially mood changes. Another differentiator that we have in delivering a hosted VoIP solution with CEN would have to do with the CenturyLink's delivery model and support model. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but in general, CenturyLink will do a site survey to make sure that the LAN is up and ready to handle this type of solution. We'll train you and set up your phones on site. And then this is another very interesting element, that you've got your infrastructure foundation on the CEN fiber backbone, or the nutmeg backbone, whatever jump on that you're on. And and rolled out similar products that are even more application. Another one that we have is called Managed Office. It takes the hosted VoIP, where you plug in the phone to the network, but it also has it also includes email, backup, and manages your entire LAN. So what's really interesting about this is probably one of the first applications other than the internet that's going to go over this network. But it will not be the last. There will just be more and more options for this user community to have access to carriers and other solution providers, and this network can be a fabulous delivery vehicle. And just one other thing in terms of the breadth of service. For folks who have a need for a call center, those types of things, we have some very sophisticated contact center solutions, security solutions that are now virtualized. So I think what you're going to see is more and more, they're putting firewalls, and we are putting firewalls in the cloud right now. And just another example of the cloud being the place with the technology that we have, and now the networks to deliver it, it's going to be the place to really, where you're going to see most of the innovation and most of the new products and new technologies seamlessly roll out to the end users. Okay, so I just want to tell you a little bit about CenturyLink. I just put a little sketch of our timeline and who we are, but I don't know, you guys didn't recognize the brand CenturyLink. Did anyone recognize Quest Communications? So right now, we are your internet service provider, and as I mentioned, we are have a very strong architecture connecting our network to your network. Quest was founded in 1995, and by 1999 they had ground up built a leading edge tier 1 global IP backbone. Interesting story about that and how it came about, but the entrepreneur there had just sold the Southern Pacific Railroad, and he did not sell the rights of way. And he took a contract, the rights of way, which is the path. He kept that, got a contract from AT&T and a contract from MCI to put down air fiber for each of those folks, and then put 10 in for himself. Smart guy, no?
96.
Was it?
96 fibers.
Oh, was it really? So I forgot the number. Okay. So 96 fibers, when they had, was it 2 each or one pair each?
So 96 of the build is Quest fibers,
Yeah.
and there's additional fibers in the overall build
Yeah.
that were sold off to other carriers.
Yeah. So I believe the whole thing was funded by this contract, and then the real value came out of this foresight in 1995 to see what fiber around the country would provide. So this company came up very quickly. Quest is a carrier's carrier. A lot of third-party sales through partners, and also selling to a lot of bandwidth to other, as a wholesaler to other providers. Century Telephone and Electronics Company became a holding company for a bunch of regional local exchange companies in the South, the middle part of the country, and the Mid-Atlantic. Then, in 2011, CenturyLink also bought the Embark local exchange assets, and then they bought Quest. And as a result of that merger, we became the third largest telecommunications company in the United States from a landline perspective. As I mentioned before, we focus on connectivity and cloud, unlike AT&T and Verizon, who are more heavily invested in mobility right now. Another big change to our company, we probably doubled our capacity, but really changed our story. We changed from telecommunications company to an IT company in 2012 when we acquired Savvis. Savvis is now called CenturyLink Technology Solutions, and they are a leading provider of cloud services, public cloud, private cloud. They host all kinds of applications, and they really built their business handling some of the most difficult clients, including Wall Street. Okay, so just a little bit about who we are and from a profile. We're someone who didn't know our brand. We're top 150 of Fortune 500. We have 48,000 employees. We have over 55 data centers around the world. We have, I think it's now, the last numbers I saw, about $20 billion in annual revenues, and $3 billion of that in free cash flow. So we are a strong company right now. We have also had the highest investor returns in 15 years, and we've had 3 CEOs over 75 years, which is pretty interesting. It talks a lot about our culture. culture, and what's really interesting about our culture, which I think is notable, is that we run like a small company, and I'm not sure if that's good or if that's bad, but very flat company, and you could say that's true. Next slide, please. So again, when we message to our customers, these are our core strengths, and this is how we are different in the marketplace. So this is really our key assets and how we make a difference for our customers. I've talked a little bit about the connectivity. Paul's going to talk a little bit more and show you some pictures of what that network looks like, or how the CEN network sits on top of that. We've talked a lot about the cloud, and really this application is just another cloud application that we're going to deliver. But one thing that really does make us different, and maybe it's because we're not the largest, and maybe it's because we're a flat organization, but how we win and how we're different is that we truly, truly are committed to working with our customers. And when we look at these assets, it's very obvious, and it's actually very obvious in CEN how we work with them. And we don't just sell products, but we design solutions. And very often in this space at this time, most of the deals that we work on, we are custom building solutions. We would build fiber out to our customers. And in this case, we don't have to because you're sitting in our pod, but solutioning is a big part of our story, and we treat each customer. We're not the biggest, but we are very much focused. Okay, this is just a little bit more about credibility, since you don't know who we are, but we cover 98% of the Fortune 500. And that includes over 33,000 business and government agencies. One of the big things that you folks, so many of you are in government and education, some of our biggest success stories in the last, I think it's been 5, maybe 7 years, has been the award of networks, the largest federal government contract. I have a whole slew of our success stories, but we do incredible business with the federal government, including we are one of their closest and leading providers of some of the most critical enhanced cybersecurity services that are available. In fact, they're not commercially available. Some of them are only available through the Department of Homeland Security. They're currently available to critical infrastructures only, which now does include states. It might include cities, I don't know, but we definitely are trusted by the federal government, and we're very strong in the government space. Out west, where we have, we are the ILEC, or the Verizon, or AT&T. There are several states out west where we actually manage the whole state. So like the CEN network, we just run the whole network here. Again, this is just more of where we play. And when we talk about that we work with our customers, we have bragging rights to all of the top 14 security firms. That's primarily in our assets, our cloud services provided by Savvis, as well as Quest, but a lot of these come from our cloud business. As I mentioned, besides the enhanced cybersecurity, we are the leading provider of MTIS for the federal government as well. That is a managed, trusted IP security that is mandated for federal agencies to deliver or to protect their infrastructure. Talk a little bit about the networks, which has been valued at $20 billion in 10 years. And from an education, we've been an awarded vendor of the Quilt Advanced Research and Education Network Consortium for Commodity ISP or Internet Service. I don't know if you folks are all familiar with Quilt. So that is the advanced network. Although you're not familiar with it, UConn is a part of that network, and you get a lot of your services from that consortium. That's their primary vehicle for procuring internet services. And with all these customers, I think our most important point that I wanted to make here is that we've been a trusted partner of CEN, UConn and Advanced Education Network for 12 years now, not just as an ISP, internet service provider, but we actually provide the data center infrastructure that CEN delivers the network on. So,
I guess that's me.
yeah, I guess that's you. Paul's going to take pictures.
Okay, so I guess we, as carriers, we like to joke around, call pictures of our network, they're baby pictures, and we break them out and brag about them. So this is a diagram, a network map of our network, and we are a facilities-based network provider, meaning that we own and operate our own fiber footprint across the country and globally. The dots that are, the white dots that are all over the area, those are our data centers that we provide our hosting and cloud services. Those are located on our network. The green shaded area is the areas where we provide local phone service as a local exchange carrier. The nearest area is in New Jersey. We do not provide local service in the Northeast beyond that.
Well, actually, that's the interesting thing. So we're not the ILEC, but we provide local services with the advancement of IP,
With the IP.
IP trunking, SIP trunking, and hosted VoIP. So that's been a game changer for local services, I guess for everyone.
So to drill down a little bit further, this is our IP backbone. So we have multi-100 gig links across our backbone. We have geographically dispersed peering connections across the world. We provide internet service, as Kathy stated. We provide internet service to the Connecticut Education Network in Connecticut as well as in Boston. And I'll dial back in.
I think what's also important about this picture is that this is the fabric that delivers this hosted VoIP to the CEN network. It's that robust of a network, and it is geographically distributed for different locations, redundancy in the right order.
So just to drill down a little bit further, so this is a snapshot that I took off of one of my mapping tools. This shows the backbone and the blue lines, and the circles are points of presence within the region. CEN is directly connected. They built fiber into our POPs in New Haven, New London, and we connect up in Boston as well at one summer. So in those locations, there's CEN direct fiber connections into the POP, and that's where we connect with a 10 gigabit connection out of West Haven that goes down to New York. And we also connect with a second 10 gigabit connection in Boston. And those services, as Kathy mentioned, they're purchased off of the Quilt commodity internet contract. So that's a national consortium of higher education, regional education networks, and they've pooled their resources and went out to bid, and we are one of several vendors on that contract, and that drives the pricing to very competitive because of the volume that they purchase. The aggregate volume that the Quilt currently purchases from CenturyLink is 57 gigabits of internet across the country. CEN represents, they have two 10 gigabit connections with a minimum commitment of 4 gigabit, but that can be upgraded to a full burstable speed up to 20 gigabit. So this little cloud and map here shows the connections a little bit further down. So within the CEN network, which is the cloud here on the bottom, there are two 10 gigabit connections. We meet with the CEN network in the 4th floor meeting room at One Summer in Boston, as well as they're co-located in our POP in West Haven. And we have two 10 gigabit connections into the CenturyLink network. So the hosted VoIP service that we're talking about today, members connecting into the CEN network would traverse the network, have two egress points to connect into the CenturyLink backbone. And in our backbone, we have the BroadSoft platform in 4 different locations throughout the country. So there is a lot of redundancy and diversity built into this design because we have two egress points from the CEN network, and from there into the CenturyLink backbone, there are multiple BroadSoft platforms throughout the country, and I've got a map on that. If anybody has any questions, you can.
So you don't actually have any equipment right on the CEN network. It all has to traverse through our ISP connections to CenturyLink?
That's correct. So 1.2 to make here is that as we look at the hosted VoIP service, one of the aspects with hosted VoIP is that we have to enable quality of service on the IP fabric so that the voice traffic can be prioritized over the data traffic, emails and browser traffic and everything else. So with the IP telephony connecting into the local area network within the customer premise, the customer's local area network needs to be QoS enabled. And then those packets will be tagged with a higher priority queue, and they'll be transported across the CEN network with those QoS tags. We'll enable QoS across the connections, and then at the entry point, the ingress point in the network, that voice over IP traffic is diverted to a separate security domain within the internet, within the Quest backbone. So it doesn't show it here on this network's on this map, but our backbone is divided into 3 separate security domains. We have an IP public internet security domain, a voice over IP security domain, and a private IP security domain. So we provide private MPLS type services to customers. Those are on separate edge devices that are on a completely separate security domain that do not touch the public IP network. And we have a separate security domain for voice over IP traffic that our own backbone uses for all of our long distance switches and local traffic going into the long distance switch. We convert everything to voice over IP, and it traverses that voice over IP security domain. So at the point where the traffic comes into the public edge devices here at the edge of the network, we have firewall connections from there into the to the voice security domain, and that's where the VoIP traffic is handed off, and from there it rides on our VoIP or voice security backbone.
Okay, so I'm just going to go real quickly here. I know we want to spend some time and get some questions from you guys, so just kind of almost a summary. I talked about this before. We are a long-term trusted partner to CEN. The other thing is that this offer of service will be handled by CEN through CenturyLink. So this will be a service that you would actually be ordering from CEN if you wanted it to be delivered over the CEN network. Or the network. And the offer itself, it's a hosted instance of voice over IP, meaning that it's in the cloud. It offers a secure, reliable, and flexible solution. And I think what all that network and talk that we just went through, a description, I think what our differentiator here is that our implementation of this technology, both from BroadSoft through our running it in our backbone network, on our IP backbone, and then the CEN's network, how we're connected to them, all of this architecture goes back to reliability service. And the goal of this level service is 5 nines reliability. Yes. Okay. So again, this allows the CEN members to deliver a VoIP functionality. These are my favorite benefits, by the way, this whole thing. This allows you folks to deliver to your clients and the people in the organizations that you work in a state-of-the-art communication system. It's not just a telephone, it's truly a communication system that extends to their homes, their hotel rooms, their cell phones. It allows simultaneous ring, advanced features of unified communications. So if a teacher has a critical message from someone, could be a principal, could be a safety issue at the school, they can get a message by a text alert. They can see that voicemail come in on their email while they're conducting class, and simply click on that and hear that message through a WAV file. But most importantly, I mean, there's all that features there, but most importantly, for the financial manager and the technologist in the organization, this is something that is virtualized so that there's no capital expense. You simply pay a per seat different instances of options.
Is it per set? It's per set?
It's really not, so it's a service, so it's per seat. So every individual, they get if required, except for one, typically they get a device, maybe a phone is included. You get a telephone number. Depending on which feature set that you chose, you would get voicemail or a varying list of features. Voicemail is one step. There's kind of more of a premium. I'll go through this in a second. And then there's the mobile features that are truly for the mobile workforce. Oh, let me just say, okay, so this is the simplification. There's no more figuring out what technology to use, upgrading the PBX. There's no more maintenance contracts. There's no more handset problems. I mean, this is truly just a service. You don't have to worry about end of life. And it is a service that you can migrate to on a seat-by-seat basis. You don't have to dump your old phone system. You can augment it. You might have an application focused on phones in some locations and not others. Especially if you have a small site where you need 4 phones. This is the perfect solution. And then these are the benefits of the user loves. This is a solution that the user can truly manage their own service and truly customize it. They can have their phone, the presence of their work phone, ringing in 4 different locations at the same time. If you're working at a hotel room, it can ring there. You can download a toolbar to your Internet Explorer on your browser that has the features that allow you to redirect those calls, change the time frames when they ring. All those features, the end user doesn't have to learn a bunch of features on their phone. They're all handled by themselves on their toolbar or in their portal. The other incredible difference about how this would affect technologists in this environment would be that you don't have to deal with move ads and changes. You don't have to bring in a software provider to do those move ads and changes. You go into the portal. When CEN offering this, you go into the portal and order your locations. However, CenturyLink has really differentiated ourselves in the delivery of this type of platform by our development. We developed the portals for delivering this service. So the way we did it, there's a lot of feature in there, but what we did, we allowed each, the administrator can assign in a location another administrator with rights to turn up services, turn down services, make moves or changes to the account. So it becomes at the user level, at the location level, and at the headquarters level, it truly becomes self-management all the way along. Each layer can add management on the service. Okay, I'm going to go real quickly for some of this stuff. I think you guys all know, and just stop me if there's any questions, but this is a really good slide, describes really the differences and the benefits of going not just to a VoIP solution, but going to a hosted VoIP solution. So, I just covered all this. Go to the next slide. This was the picture that shows our 4 instances, how they're geographically diverse.
And the 4 locations are Chicago, Rocky Mount, North Carolina, Maryland Heights, Missouri, and Highlands Ranch, Colorado. These are the BroadSoft platforms that are linked together and redundant and are on our backbone. So the connectivity between through CEN, through our IP connection into the BroadSoft is all on that. There is no handoff between other vendors or anything like that.
Okay,
So,
good. Sorry.
so the hosting is actually being done, distributed amongst those 4 sites?
That's correct. So in the event that there's any issues with one site, the other site can provide the service to in a redundant totally on type of configuration.
Okay, advanced features that you get from unified messaging, online access, and an efficient voice system from cost to delivery to management. Again, I mentioned some of these before. We talked about unified messaging, being able to see your voicemails show up in your desktop and your email, simultaneous ring, and remote office are those powerful anywhere type services that allow you to create calls, take calls,
simultaneous ring, which is the ability to have multiple phones ring at the same time, and as well as in the remote office, which essentially allows you to receive calls remotely to a cell phone or a home phone, and calls that are originated from that phone, the call party will see the office extension and not the cell phone or home phone extension. So what it essentially does is allows you to present just one phone number from a business side. So customers or clients or anyone that you deal with in the public, you can provide one office number, and then all of your own personal phone numbers remain private, and they can still reach you on those phones using the toolbar and the portal, but you do not have to hand out your cell phone number and your home number and your other phone numbers. Everyone just gets one phone number, and then you can manage that to allow those calls to reach you. And there's a number of other features within the portal that allow you to define who can call and when those calls can reach you and things like that, which I'll go into.
So if I'm on the phone, say I'm leaving the house, and I take a phone call, and I'm leaving, I want to transfer from my office phone, which is in my house, to my cell phone. Can I do that on the fly?
Yes,
You can.
you can. So you could be on your office line, transfer it to your cell phone. Your cell phone will ring, you'll answer it, you'll immediately pick up, the other party will not hear anything different. You could walk around, come back to your office phone, and transfer the call back to your office line without any interruption to the call. So if it's a conference call or anything like that, you actually can do that. So you could leave the office, stay on the line by transferring it to your cell phone, and go home in the car and still be on the call.
So, well, can we just go ahead, we've got like 3 minutes left before 2:45, and I want to do a demo, but I want to have some time to answer some more questions. Can you just go ahead so we can see the actual seats that they would buy? Okay, here we go. So, real simple, this is so simple, it's ridiculous. You have a choice of selecting seats. You've got basic, standard, premium, there's a couple more. This would be a basic, no voicemail, you hang on the wall in school, that type of thing. The next level up, oh, by the way, it includes the handset, it includes the phone number, it includes unlimited local in your local calling area, as well as unlimited on-net domestic long distance. And a basic feature pack, basic features service, which is actually a pretty long list, but it includes transfer and all, call waiting and all those types of things. The next package brings in the unified messaging and voicemail, and then the premium package brings in those mobility features of anywhere, remote worker, and also one called go ahead.
Do you have the ability to mixing packages or stuff you want to say
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's the whole beauty of this. So here, go to the next slide, let's see even more. So these are the three basic
So,
individual.
so one enterprise could have a mix of basic phones for,
Oh, yeah.
the break room and the hallway phone, and then a number of standard seats for certain workers, and then premium seats for other workers, and then the next.
That's the whole beauty.
And then the other two
You pay for
seat options are the conference phone and the receptionist option, which has the extra sidecars for monitoring and managing multiple, group phones.
Yeah, there's a PC interface for that receptionist, so she can actually use a PC application on the screen to click and see who's on and who's not.
So, looking at that, and kind of related to the other question, what if your environment is set up where you've got like one number coming in and there's 3 or 4 handsets around the room?
So that would be a hunt group or a group environment where you could have a number of individual phones within an office participate as part of a group, so that when that call to that number, so each person could have his own individual number, but then you could have a group phone number.
What if you don't want individual phone numbers?
You can absolutely have that as well. So you could have one phone number for a bank of phones, have them ring in a punt pattern, so they would ring the first one and then the next phone and the next phone, or ring the least busy phone as the next phone, so that way the calls get spread out amongst a pool of phones. Those are all features that are defined within the group option, so that the users can you can define those as far as the method that the calls come in, so that you can define, like I said, if you wanted to have all the phones ring simultaneously at once, have them ring one phone first, then the next line,
From a
have them.
pricing perspective, is that cheaper than 4 individual lines if you've got a 4-station group?
So you would need, if you had 4 phones, you'd need 4 seats. So there's your cost of 4 seats. And then you can, the group features is simply a feature within those, within the service, so that you could take those 4 phones, put them into a group, and then define a number of attributes for that group as far as how the calls are handled and when the calls are run. So in other words, if you had a 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Group, you could define that as that the calls made during that time to that group would ring under the rules that you would define, and then after 5, you could just say go to a different number, you know, and go to voicemail or whatever the rule.
We're pretty much out of time, so can you go to the end, or just actually cycle through the, this is
So
really
in
important.
addition, the soft client, which is a soft phone that would be downloaded to PC, Mac, or tablet, Android, iPhone. So that could be a phone that would reside as an application on a computer.
Is that your own smartphone, or is that like Breer, or is that a third-party smartphone?
It's a broad soft platform soft phone. And then also you could have a voicemail only box. So if you had just a extension that went straight to a voicemail as a so it wouldn't actually have a
A
seat.
remote worker that just uses a cell phone, right? You want to tie them together, you want to have them in the same directory as everyone else. So it really needs that unified messaging, sure.
Is the soft client included with the other?
It's a seat.
You have to add it on.
So no, you would have, so if you had a seat,
With a phone.
then through the user portal, you could download the soft client.
So it's included with those other.
Correct.
They can port over your existing phone numbers, honestly.
Yeah, so we've checked, so we have to do individual checks for each site, but I think we've done a pretty extensive check in the state of Connecticut.
Right, the service is available throughout the state, and we can provide new phone numbers, or we can port over existing numbers. We do have a verification process where we have to determine the service is available, which I've already done, and it's available statewide, and the ability to port over existing numbers. But that's something that we would do before we do provide the service. But like I said, I've already verified the service is available. So we can port over existing VID numbers or provide new numbers, or a combination of both.
You basically video too, or is that coming?
So these phones actually have video on them. So you can, with this screen, you can actually enable a video call. But we do video conferencing as a separate service than this phone service.
But you can all the time phone together included in.
Yes.
What you currently have?
And do you have to use your endpoint, or can you use any certain endpoint?
So we offer, so the service comes with the phone. We offer the Polycom phones. There's a number of different models. These are the VVX 600 and 500. We do allow customers to bring their own phone. There are a certain list of phones that we would basically approve phone list, but if it's a SIP-enabled phone, usually that's no problem. But we would have to make sure that it was on the approved phone.
We actually have a complete demo working and running here, without even being, we've been doing test calls. It's just that simple. We just plug it into a, put it on and that's how simple it is. Literally, you could have an office in a box if you had that application in your organization.
So in that type of situation, can you pick those up and effectively take them anywhere and plug them in
network, you could take that phone, unplug it from its current location, walk it over to another building that's on your network, plug it in, it will automatically register with the BroadSoft platform, and it will establish itself, and you'll be able to make telephone calls from that
Could
location.
I bring it home and plug it in?
Yeah.
And you'll be able to receive, so it's inbound, outbound.
Correct.
Okay.
And also.
So it'll register, so all it needs is a public internet connection, and it will register with the network and come up. It's designed to work within. So in this situation, that switch would represent your local area network. You know, these cables are the cabling infrastructure, so obviously the system needs to be able to, your local area network has to be VoIP enabled, QoS enabled. There's some configuration requirements as far as VLANs and configurations that have to be configured, but once that's established, you're able to move that phone anywhere within that environment.
So can we just go probably to the last, I think we're out of time.
We got a couple minutes.
Oh, we do, okay.
You said they're not inviting. What happens from a disaster recovery standpoint? Like, you guys are pretty protected and you have backups all over the place, right? You've done it much. But what happens if from the facility you only have one internet server? I mean, it's not the optimal planning, but
Well, this
let's
is a
say
great
you do.
question. This is a great question that we ran by our project folks.
So there are a number of settings within the portals that can define how the phone service works if the end user is unreachable. So if the end environment is unreachable, it can be set up so that calls can be automatically rerouted to another phone, to a cell phone, or to some external phone outside of that office. So in the event that that's a situation, you can set to have your phones forwarded to that other location. You can do that remotely. We had a question earlier about 911, where what happens, obviously, these phones have, and I don't have it up on the screen, but when we build the system, we build a 911 location for that phone. The user has the ability to change their address for 911, and that will register within the system within a few minutes, so that the person moves the phone, that phone, if they're back home, they can change the address for 911 purposes.
Is this the 911 portal? Is this the portal for 911?
This is the administrator portal. These are some
Okay.
screenshots. But so in the event that you have a network outage, the solution would be that we have it's an AdTran 6533, basically a switch that a local phone like a POTS line, a regular business line would plug into, so that in the LAN environment, should the network not be able to, should be down, you would be able to dial 911. It would go out over a local phone line, should, as a emergency backup type of arrangement. So that way the site is survivable from a network outage.
There's 911, that's how you configure that.
So here it has the location that is built in the system, and here would be the current location. So the user has the ability to change that address should they move the phone. And there are some FCC rules regarding that. So any service that we provide, there's a whole list of rules as far as 911, because that's a big issue. And the ability to change the phone, that's a feature and a nice feature, but it's also a responsibility to the user. They have to, with that comes that responsibility, because you take that phone and go across town and plug it in to the library phone and you make a 911 call. If that hasn't been changed, the phone will appear as if it was made from its base location.
And chances are it won't be changed, because the majority of users aren't gonna go in there and do that.
That's correct.
The
This is
features
really
there-
designed for a
Exactly.
mobile workforce that can, someone has a corporate office that they work for a week from another location, they can go there and establish that phone so that they appear as if they're working out of their home, their regular office.
So I think we should just try to practice.
Yeah, one quick question on this. In terms of configuration, it's on the phones, the buttons and all this kind of stuff. Is this based upon the MAC address, or is it based upon a user profile that was moved?
Each phone has a the MAC address, so that's what it is.
So if it isn't a situation where John Smith logged off of that phone, moved to another office for a while, and logged onto that, his configuration would follow him.
It's with the phone itself.
Okay, I'll cover for you. I'll make it up. Okay, so I think we're pretty much out of time. I just want to try to go to the last slide and tell you folks about where we are. This is that toolbar we talked about.